So my library story begins way back in 1997. In the summer of 97, I was going into my senior year of high school, and my mom actually worked at the library. She worked in what at the time was the lending department here at the main library, circulation services later on. So she suggested that maybe I apply for a job at the library. So I applied at the time to 3 different locations on the west side: Green Township, the Overlook branch, and the Delhi branch. I actually got an interview pretty quickly at the Overlook branch, which is now Covedale, for those of you who wouldn't know, and I did not get that job. So about 2 or 3 weeks later, I got an interview at the Delhi branch for a student assistant position, and I did get that position. So I started in September of 1997 as a student assistant at the Delhi Township branch. The funny story about that was, as I worked at Delhi, Delhi actually did a renovation and expansion, and as typically happens in those situations, when a library is being renovated or expanded, the staff gets sent out to other neighborhood branches, and I got sent out to, you guessed it, Covedale, where I didn't get hired just a few months earlier. So I felt like that was kind of awkward at first to go in there and like, hey, I'm working here even though you never hired me. So that was an interesting experience. But what was really cool about it was when I wrapped up and I left Covedale to go back to Delhi full time, the manager at the time at Covedale said, I should have hired you when I had the chance. So I took that as a pretty good compliment. So I worked at the Delhi Township branch for just over 2 years. I left in October of '99. And, the library wasn't the trajectory of my career that I expected. I didn't expect this is going to be where I was going to spend the next 25 years. So I left the system for a little while there. And then around spring of the year 2000, I started to kind of miss what I had been doing at the library. So I reapplied for a position downtown at the main library. And I was hired as a shelver in the Education and Religion department. So as I like to say, when I started that fateful day at the end of July of 2000, I was the, lowest paid person in the, most entry-level position at the library. So I was in the Education and Religion department as a shelver for about a year and a half or so maybe. And then the 2 full-time shelvers at the time had been there for quite a while, and they both got promoted to different positions very quickly, close to each other. So those full-time positions were not easy to come by, and I had only been here maybe, like I said, a year and a half or so, and was able to move into a full-time position. And again, I was thinking in my mind, this isn't where I want to work necessarily for the rest of my career. I had other ambitions and goals at that point, but at the same time, I like to eat and I like to have some money, and gosh, PTO is nice. And so I decided to stick around a little bit longer. And then not too long after that, a year or 2 later, at the time an LCA is what we call them nowadays, LSA position opened up in the Education Religion department. I applied for that and got that position. And then, a year or so after that, ML21 happened. And ML21, for those who don't know, was a re-envisioning, reimagination of the main library. Up until that point, the main library consisted of a lot of different subject departments. There was education, religion, and science and technology, and government and business, and art and music, and all these different departments. Those all kind of got merged into the information and reference department. And then a couple other departments were created, like the TechCenter, TeenSpot came along at that point as well. So I ended up applying in the TechCenter. And actually, a funny story that I have from that situation was basically everybody who worked at Maine had to reapply for a position at that point. So it was a little bit scary. So I had applied for every position that was available. And I ended up interviewing for both TeenSpot and TechCenter at the same time. So the manager of the TechCenter at the time, a gentleman named Sean Mullen, was sitting in this chair, and the manager of TeenSpot, one Paula Brim-Heger, was sitting in this chair. So I was literally going back and forth answering questions. And I remember walking out of that interview feeling confident that I did good, but also really, really scared because I was like, wow, I either like totally nailed 2 interviews at once or I totally bombed 2 interviews at one time. So luckily, I was offered the position in TechCenter, and I started in the TechCenter when it officially became a department in 2007. Um, about a year and a half after that, I moved up to the specialist position in the TechCenter, and TechCenter was kind of rolling along there. Around 2014 or so, we started hearing these rumblings about the idea of a makerspace at the library, and we didn't quite know what that was going to be yet. So I began talking to my manager at that point, and we talked about, gosh, it would make a lot of sense if the Makerspace were part of the TechCenter. In 2016, I was able to be promoted to the team lead position in TechCenter Makerspace. Held that position for a couple years, and then in January of 2020, I moved up and became the manager of TechCenter Makerspace. Of course, 2020 was quite the year. So about 2.5 months after I officially became the manager, COVID hit. And COVID was a very weird time for us, obviously. But as a department, we were the first ones to come back after COVID. And really within that first maybe month and a half or so, things were kind of wonky and weird. And then it really felt like it was business as usual. We got back in the swing of things pretty quickly, and maybe a little bit slower, a little bit more space in between for our customers, but we got back to doing what we love to do. And here I am today in 2024, manager of TechCenter Makerspace. So, I feel like I haven't had that one specific mentor over the years, but I've had a lot of, people that I've learned things from. I like to think that everybody that I've worked with at some point, I've taken something from, experiences and interactions with them, good and bad. But definitely with all the various managers I've had over the years, to see different management styles. When I did the Tomorrow's Manager program back in 2015, that was a really cool experience as well. Getting to hear different managers and how they handle the same situations, and how different it can be. So I really learned a lot. I feel like during that time frame of, it doesn't always have to be one solution for everybody. There's not just one answer as far as management style that absolutely works in every situation. A lot of it's really about knowing the individuals, knowing your team, knowing the community that you're in, the environment that you're in. I like to think that some of the things that I picked up, I'm a big believer in not asking people to do things that I wouldn't be willing to do myself. I like to be very connected to my team, I see people, talk to them, be available to them. I've had those experiences in the past where I've had, managers or known of other managers who kind of come in and lock their door and you don't see them for hours. And I don't want to be that type of manager. But yeah, I think, so many of the folks that, whether they realize it or not, have been mentors to me over the years that I've learned from. There's a wealth of knowledge in this library system, and, getting the time to talk to people. And it's, usually not in those formal settings. It's not, in a meeting, it's the minutes before the meeting or after the meeting or at lunch, or, passing somebody in the hallway or riding with somebody in a car somewhere. I feel like those are the times that you learn the most. And you get to talk to people and get to know them more than just, a fellow library employee. Dig a little bit deeper into their psyche, listen to some of their stories, see some of the things that they've experienced and things that they've done over the years that have worked and, sometimes maybe not worked, and learn from those and put those into practice or not put those into practice, as the case may be in some cases. So when COVID hit back in 2020, I remember that last day that we were open. And at that point, the mindset was, we're going to close for 2 weeks and then reevaluate and, whatever. And this was mid-March, so we're thinking, we're gonna get a 2-week vacation here, and we'll be back in April, and everything will be fine. And suddenly, 2 weeks became almost 3 months, um, and it was weird and it was scary. And obviously, it's cliche now to say, "Oh, these unprecedented times," and I got so sick of hearing that line, "These unprecedented times" during COVID. But it really was like nobody had ever experienced anything like that, and hopefully, we never will again. Um, but one of the things that I was most proud of with our team during that time was, we were still coming in and we were doing, some projects, 3D printing masks, sewing masks, doing some other projects like that. But, the outside the work thing that was really cool to me was we had organized a few like Friday night Zoom calls. We're just, the entire department would get on Zoom and, just kind of check in with each other because, keeping in mind at this time, people weren't really getting out, certainly not socializing very much. Um, and it was a really cool thing just to, see everybody's faces, sitting there for a couple hours on a Friday night, just chit chatting and catching up with everybody. Um, and it was at that time that I really realized that, this group of people, this, team, um, they're more than just coworkers, they're friends. They care about each other. And, we were there for each other in this really, bizarre, emotionally trying time. And in particular, I remember the one night, and this Zoom call went on probably about 3 hours. It was midnight, maybe even a little after. And a lot of folks had already dropped off the call, obviously. And there were maybe, 4 of us still on the call. And you could tell we were all tired and, ready to go to bed for sure. But like nobody wanted to hang up quite yet. And it was, we just kind of sat there and stared at each other. And it was like, I miss you guys. And just to know that we were there for each other, and how much, that camaraderie meant to everybody. It was really emotional and really cool to see how impactful that was in such a tough time for everybody in the world. We have so many interesting customers here at the main library, and there's been customers that I've gotten to know over the years. Some who have been coming here as long as I've worked here, some that I've seen grow up from kids to teenagers to young adults to parents themselves at this point. It's really cool to see how people change and grow over the years, and to see the impact that you can have in their lives sometimes. We have customers who come in who specifically, will seek me out and they'll be like, "Oh, hey, Nate, do you remember blah, blah, blah that happened 10 years ago?" And I do sometimes actually remember that. And sometimes I don't, but we chat up anyway. And, getting to know some of these customers in a more personal level is really cool too. Something that I've been talking a lot about as I've been doing some trainings for these verbal intervention de-escalation trainings is getting to know customers outside of the moment of crisis. And that's something that I like to think that I've done a really good job of over the years is, getting to know people, getting to know, what makes them tick and, what makes them happy, what angers them sometimes. And that interaction with them and getting to be a consistent presence in their life. We have a lot of customers here who have a lot of instability, whether it be from housing or food situations or school situations or whatever it might be. But the number of folks who come in and they say, "Hey, I know you've been working here a long time." That familiarity that they have, that consistency that they get from seeing that familiar face, you can tell that it brings some joy to them to see somebody that they've known for a long time, whether it be they may or may not actually know my name, but they know, "Hey, you're the guy who's worked here for a really long time and you've helped me do this or that." One of the things that is the absolute coolest thing to me about working at the library is helping people really change their lives. particularly in the tech center over the years, the number of people that I have helped get a job, um, I mean, hundreds, literally hundreds of people. Um, I used to joke several years ago. I had a nice little system going on where when I walked to Skyline for lunch, one of the folks there that worked there, I had helped get that job, and they were always super nice to me, and would give me a large drink when I ordered a regular size drink type of thing. And there was a young lady who worked at Chipotle down at Fountain Square, and she recognized, she said, "Hey, you helped me get this job." And that's really cool. There was a guy at Penn Station, same thing. It was basically everywhere that I went to go grab some lunch, like somebody there knew me, and I had helped them get that job, and I had had that positive impact on their life. Um, and sometimes it's getting a job. Sometimes it's helping somebody find housing. Again, like these are life-changing things. So impactful, and we don't always realize just how much impact we can have on somebody's life by just being positive and being helpful and caring, and maybe sometimes going that extra step to make sure that writing down that email address and password so they have it next time, giving them a copy of something so they can physically hold on to it, just showing compassion. The world is often not very compassionate, and I like to think that's something that we do a really good job of here at the library. Yeah, people sometimes ask me, I get this question a lot of times actually when I'm doing interviews: what is your favorite part about working at the library? And or working in the tech center and Makerspace. And I often tell people in the tech center, again, helping somebody get that job, helping somebody get that house, the apartment, the healthcare, whatever. That's really amazing stuff. And then in the Makerspace, it's so creatively stimulating to work in that space. And we're coming up here on a little over 9 years at the Makerspace now, and every time that I think I've seen it all, somebody comes in with a new project that I never would have envisioned or thought about. So it keeps my creativity and my brain stimulated. I think that's one of the coolest things about working at the library is that we get to do a lot of stuff that you don't typically think about a library doing. We're more than just books. It sounds like a silly slogan, but it's true. So many things that we do are way beyond that scope, and it makes me feel so happy to be able to provide these services to people and to continually evolve and be supported by an organization that allows us to do that too. I sometimes maybe we all take for granted how lucky we are that we have the technology here. We have the infrastructure to be able to help people. The library in Hamilton County and Cincinnati here, the community loves us. It's amazing. You hear some of these scary stories sometimes about libraries not getting funding or having to shut down, or all the things that happen out there in the world. And we're so lucky in this community because folks support us. They come to us, they trust us, and that trust is such a huge thing. I often say there's times that people come to us with questions that I would never envision asking in a library, but people ask us because they trust, and they know that we're going to find out the answer for them, and we do. And that's an amazing thing to be able to provide that service.